Thank you. Hello, children. Welcome back. Okay, this is again Teacher Brenda here with the 10 minutes math. Okay, and we are going to explore today, okay, let me see this, part 10, okay, part 10 of the topic time. All right, how to calculate fractions or decimals of time. Okay, so sometimes in calculating time conversions, like 2 hours is how many minutes? Okay, that's kind of easy because 1 hour is 60 minutes, 2 hours will be 120 minutes. That's pretty much not too difficult for someone to understand and do. However, what if the question was like 2.5 hours? How many minutes would that be? You know, or what if the question was just quarter hour? Okay, so if you look at this question, this is dealing very much with fractions of time. Okay, this is in fact a proper fraction. This is a mixed number. So today's session, today's part 10, I would cover more of proper fractions and decimals. For example, what is 0.2 hours? Okay, tell me in minutes. So usually the questions are always phrased in a certain way. For example, they will ask you, they will give you a fraction or decimal of a unit of time. That's how the pattern will be. For example, here you have a question here, 2/3 of an hour. Okay, you see the question there, 2/3 of an hour. In your book, you probably you will see the question 2/3 hour, and then they would put in a dash and put in a square and then write there how many minutes is that. This is how your question would look on the book or any worksheets. But how do you understand this question 2/3 hour? It means 2/3 of an hour. There is an invisible of here. So how would you write? What does that of means? That of means you multiply. Okay, so again, I will write 2/3 of, I'll change it to multiply, and that hour, instead of hour, since they wanted us to find minutes, then I will think of what is the connecting number, the conversion between hours and minutes, and that is 60, right? Because 1 hour makes 60 minutes, so I will multiply with that. I will change it now. From that hour, I will change that unit of time, I will change it, and I will change it to minutes. And that is how we can solve these questions. That's all. Let's look at decimal, okay? They would, in your book, you would probably find, let's say 0.5 years is equivalent to how many months? This is probably a question in your book. But when you read this question, you got to read it as 0.5 of a year. So I would write then 0.5 of becomes multiplication. And since the conversion now, the unit of time I'm talking here is year, and I wanted months, then I think, all right, I know that 1 year is 12 months, so I will be multiplying with 12. And you can work out this calculation, okay? This is actually 6. So 0.5 is half. Half times 12 is 6 months. So 0.5 of a year is the same as half of the year. It means 6 months. So that's what we would look into today. And I would be explaining all this using pictures, okay? I'm not talking about graphics, but I'm talking about rectangles here, okay? So how are we going to understand, okay? So imagine you have 1 hour. This is a rectangle. The whole block here is 1 hour. 1 hour is 60 minutes, okay? 1 hour is 60 minutes. Now, if you had a fraction asking you, how much is half an hour? You are practically dividing this 1 hour into 2 blocks of time, which means that 60 minutes is going to be, it's going to be divided by 2, giving you 30 minutes and 30 minutes. Now, don't forget that half is fraction, written as fraction form. It's also the same as 0.5 when you write it as a decimal. So when the question says half an hour, these are are so important facts of time that's pretty much you got to do this without even thinking. It's like half an hour, it's 30 minutes, you know, it's that you have to reach that understanding of time. Okay, let's look at this. What if you took an hour and instead of dividing it into 2 parts, you divided it into 3 parts? So now you will make 1/3 of an hour. So 60 divided by 3, you would have 20 minutes, which means 1/3 of an hour, okay, is equivalent to 20 minutes. Let's say you went to the bathroom and you took 20 minutes to have your shower, which means you practically took 1/3 of an hour to shower. That kind of rhymes. Anyways, what about 2/3 of an hour? That's 40 minutes. Just add up the minutes. Now, how would you do this? Again, you just write 2/3, change the word off to multiply. And since you want to convert from hour to minutes, you take in the unit of conversion times 60. And then you write the number, the unit, which is minutes. Okay. Then you do the division. This is 1, this is 20. And if you work out the calculation here, the math here, you would get 40 minutes. Look here, 20 plus 20. You can do it per diagram way or you can do it via the calculation way. That's up to you. Complete 3/3 of an hour means 60 minutes. All right. So let's move on to the second slide and we will see more examples. Now over here, 1 hour is divided into, earlier, the first slide, we divided into 2 parts. Then we divided an hour into 3 parts. Now we divide an hour into 4 parts. Okay, can you see how your conversion, your fraction is happening here? So this is called quarter of an hour, half of an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and the 4/4 of an hour. Every quarter is also 0.25 as decimal. So if someone says, what is 0.25 hour in minutes? It's the same thing as asking what is quarter hour in minutes. So take 60, divide into 4 parts. You will get 15, 15, 15, 15 for each quarters. Just like this, your clock, you know. Remember the lesson reading quarter to, half past, quarter past. I mean, yeah, all those quarters and halves. Yeah, your clock is easily divided into 4 parts. Now let's move on to the next picture here that shows us 1 hour being divided into 5 parts. Instead of 4, now I divide into 5 parts. And how many minutes would each part be? If you took 60 and you divide into 5, you would have 12 minutes each part. Which means if your question was, what is 2/5 of an hour? All you needed to do was take 2/5, multiply off an hour, which is 60. What are you doing? You are taking 60, you are dividing it with 5. So that's what I did. 60 divided by 5, I got 12. And then I'm going to multiply it with 2. So I'll have 12 here. Okay, and I'm going to multiply with 2 and I will get 24. You can do a simple adding of 12 times table here. 1/5 of an hour is 12 minutes. 2/5 of an hour is 24 minutes. That's times table 12. 3/5 of an hour is 36 minutes. 4/5 of an hour is 48 minutes. 5/5 of an hour is completely 60 minutes. And 1/5 is known as, it's actually not known, it is 0.2. Okay, as a decimal. So this is 0.2 hours. This is 0.4 hours. This is 0.6 hours. This is 0.8 hours. And finally, this is 1.0 hours. Exactly 60 minutes. Okay, clear. Now let's move on to the next slide, which moves, okay, now the conversion, okay, the conversion, the unit here is now looking into days and hours. Okay, so now I have here 1 day is 24 hours. Now if I took my 1 day and divided it into 4 parts, I would have quarter of a day, quarter of a day, quarter of a day, and quarter of a day. I need to take 24 and divide into 4, and I would have 6 hours each quarters. Okay, so if I ask you how long is half a day, you just take 6 plus 6, 12 hours. How long is 3/4 of a day? It's 18 hours. How long is quarter of a day? It's 6 hours. In the same way, remember, I can also take this 24 hours, okay, assuming this is one day, it's 24 hours. I can also divide it into 3 parts. So someone can ask you, what is 1/3 of a day? So 1/3 of a day means take 24, divide by into 3 parts, you will get 8. 8 and 8. So 1/3 of the day I'm sleeping, 1/3 of the day I'm working, 1/3 of the day I'm doing nothing. All right. So that's how you can actually divide your day up. Pretty much, I think that's what we're all doing. We are like doing like 1/3, 8 hours we'll sleep, 8 hours we go to work, and the balance 8 hours is to do everything else. Like bathing, you know, traveling from one place to another, Facebooking, chit-chatting, looking into YouTube, talking to your family, having dinner, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So let's move on now to 1 year equivalent to 12 months. And what if you divided that year into 4 parts? What is a quarter of a year? A quarter of a year, you take 12, divide into 4, you get 3 months. So half of the year is 6 months. 3/4 of the year is 9 months. The same way, I can even take a year and divide into 3 parts. Every part, now this is 12, remember, it's not 24, huh? This is now years to months. So if there are 12 months in a year and I divide it into 3 parts, every part would be 4 months. This is 1/3, 4 months. This is 2/3, 8 months. You practically go to school more than 2/3 of the year. Okay, we have to calculate, usually we have about 40 over weeks of school. Yeah, it's about that. Okay, so with that, okay, this is the division, the decimal of quarters. Quarter is 0.25, which means this is 0.25. Okay, quarter, and then this is 0.5, half. And then the next quarter would be 0.75. So in the case they ask you, what is 0.75 years? You are looking at this, 369. Take 0.75 times with 12, and you will get 9 months. Okay, so clear now. And we have got, we're going to go to the next slide, which is into decades and centuries. Now let's look here. Now, decades is because the conversion is like 1 decade is 10 years. It's pretty difficult to convert it into 3 parts or even to 4 parts. It makes it like not so beautiful numbers. So usually they'd either break it up into half. Okay, obviously you can break a decade up. Half a decade would be 5 years, 5 years, or they might break it into an easier number like 1/5. Okay, so you take that 10 years, divide into 5 parts, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, and so on. Every part would be spelling you 2 years. So what is 3/5 of a decade? How many years are that? Okay, so you just take 3/5 of the decade. The conversion is from decade to years, so the number is 10. So times 10 years. Okay, and then you will do, you will have to divide here. Okay, and then 3 times 2, 6. Or if you understood this diagram, 3/5, 1, 2, 3. This is 3/5, and that corresponds to 6 years. Okay, that is also the same. 1/5 is also the same as 0.2. So if you have 3/5, that is the same as 0.6. So 0.6 decade is also going to give you the same answer, 6 years, just by multiplying by 10. Let's look into the centuries. And then if you have a century, which is, now the conversion here is century to years. Okay, so 1 century is 100 years. So what is 1/5 of a century? So you take that 100 years, divide into 5 parts. Every part will be 20 years. Okay, let's say this lady, she lived for 3/5 of a century. Okay, which means that's the same kind of question. So let's say this lady lived up to 4/5 of the century. Okay, so what is 4/5 of a century? You take 4/5 times 100 years, cut, this would be 20, and you would have 80 years. In other words, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 20, 40, 60, 80. All right. And if you want to convert that even to decimal, that would be 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, and this would be 0.8. All right. So decimals, fractions, they are very related to each other. Okay. And this is how you understand them, put them into the topic of time, and see how you can calculate, okay? Calculate what you call units of time. So that's about it for today, okay? For today's session. And the next session we'll look into mixed numbers, okay? So this is all proper fractions of time. The next session would be looking into mixed numbers and conversion of units of time using mixed numbers, right? So with that, I end my session for today. If you liked the video and you learned, then you hit the like button, subscribe, share. Take care. Bye-bye.